All right, thank you so much for being with us here and joining us for the last session of this first day with a roundtable following the film. I already introduced Udi Aloni, so let me move on to the two other speakers of the table. Panos Charitos, who is a journalist and documentarist, for all people in Greece, a very, very familiar place that has been bringing images of war, images of conflict to our screens in the television. He has been extensively reporting from conflict zones and political crises across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. As a freelancer, he covered the Chechen War, the Georgia-Abkhazia conflict, the civil war in back then Zaire, and the Albania pyramid scandal, where he established the Athens News Agency's first Tirana office. As a war correspondent, he reported on major conflicts from Intifada, the Arab Spring in Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya, to wars Kosovo, Sierra Leone, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, as well as the battle for Mosul. He was covering the latest situation in Palestine and Israel, and I think for the Greek audience it was really intense, the images he brought and the feeling of this extreme situation that is going on there right now. So we're really glad to have him around. He will have to leave at 10 to 8, so we need to start immediately. And let me also introduce Polymeris Voglis, who is with us for this panel, and is professor of social history at the University of Thessaly and a member of the Civil Wars Study Group, who is a co-organizer of this conference. He studied history at the University of Athens and the European, with a PhD from the European University Institute. He has published in English the book Becoming a Subject, Political Prisoners During the Greek Civil War, and in Greek several books like The Greek Society Under Occupation, The Unfeasible Revolution, Social Dynamics of the Greek Civil War, and Dynamic Resistance, Subjectivity, Political Violence, and the Struggle Against Dictatorship. So many themes like the conflict, like the occupation, that kind of link, although from a very different perspective, to the themes that we've been discussing today. So the floor is all yours. I think we might start with Panos, because we're going to be in a rush.
So thank you for having me, for inviting me here. I will try to speed up, so to be on time with my flight, first of all, and secondly, to leave enough time for the rest of the speakers. Let me start telling you that this is not the first time that I watched the movie of Udi. I watched it 2 nights ago, actually. Udi, he thought that we can see the movie whenever he wants, and he's bringing a USB, and he doesn't know that there are hidden places on internet that you can dig and to find things of other people. So you can go to YouTube whenever you want. He has more movies, I have to let you know. So, for me, the movie, it was a déjà vu. I spent 15 years in the Middle East. I spent 15 years in Jerusalem, based in Jerusalem, covering Middle East. So I met a lot of characters, a lot of people like David. And when I first saw the movie 2 nights ago, in the first 20 minutes of the movie, I thought about where I was when Udi was working on forgiveness in 2006. I had spent 50 days in Beirut covering the Israeli invasion in Lebanon in response to the execution of 3 Israeli soldiers, and the kidnapping of 2 others by Hezbollah. Then I reflected on my 15 years in Middle East, which I mentioned before, and started counting the wars I covered, and realized that the place with the most of the wars was Palestine and Israel. With the most and the longest wars. I exclude the civil war of Syria, which has lasted longer than anything else in the region. As soon as And from the beginning, as soon as I landed in Tel Aviv on September 29 of 2000, the Second Intifada broke out. It lasted for years. In 2006, the war in Lebanon. In 2007, the conflict between Hamas and Fatah over the control of Gaza, and then Israel's decision to impose a total blockade on movement and the supply of goods in Gaza Strip. In 2008, the kidnapping of Gilad Shalit and Israel's invasion in Gaza. In 2012, another invasion, limited invasion in Gaza. In 2014, another war. From 2018 to 2021, small periods of tension, and finally, in 2023, the attack that Israel took as a green light to open Pandora's box. In total, since the recognition of Israel until today, Israel has waged 15 wars in Gaza. At this point, I want to go back to where I started in 2006 when Udi was working on this film, and I was in Lebanon covering the war. So in 2006, the goal of the Israeli operation was to free the kidnapped soldiers and eliminate Hezbollah operational capability. The war lasted 29 days, and both sides at the end declared victory for that war. On a military level, Israel did not achieve anything. The soldiers were returned dead 2 years later, 2008. Okay. In terms of communication, Hezbollah emerged from that war strengthened, and the societies on both sides counted approximately 1 million displaced persons on the Lebanese side and 400 to 500,000 Israeli civilians on the other side displaced. So I asked myself the obvious. After so many wars, where does the Israeli society stand? Why does not turn to political options that differentiate in approaching and resolving disputes in the region on a different basis? Are there such options? Are there different voices within the Israeli political scene? And if so, why they are not being heard? Outside of Gaza, Israel has waged sometimes defensively and sometimes defensively and the most of the times offensively, 13 wars in the wider region. All in all, including Gaza, the number of the wars reached to 28 in the last 77 years. So the number is extremely big, it's huge. Israel is experiencing a permanent state of war. There is no generation that has not experienced war, and if you exclude 1948 and 1967, where there were major geographical changes to Israel's benefit, the entire rest of the period characterized by battles to secure the occupied territories, and within the framework of securing them, attempts are made to justify the expansion of security zones around the settlements, which after a few years are built and security zones expanded along with the settlement again and again and again and again. The entire recurring pattern of wars, of tensions, seems like a passive acceptance of perpetuation of the people and situation in conditions of crisis and insecurity. It's like a roller coaster where you know exactly what is the rotation, what is its rotation, how it will be, and you know exactly what to expect because it's a loop. You have seen it, and you know the problems and the cause, but you refuse to accept the share of your responsibility because the path you have chosen also affects the lives of others, so inevitably it will affect your own life as well. So the answer to the unquestioning acceptance of an everyday life that provokes or even encourages violence maybe not be complicated. I remember in 2013, I had started filming a documentary under the title Coexisting with the Saints, that dealt with cohabitation of people from the three monotheistic religions in Jerusalem, and the role of the religion in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I remember interviewing Alex Libak. Alex is an Israeli photographer. In fact, is one of the few people who have captured the history of Israel with his lens, and I respect him very much. So, describing Israel and the facts of the society, he told me that the turning point was 1967. After the 6 Days War, society agreed to the theory of the deterrent power and enforcement by any means against its neighbors. So they accept the imposition of the Zionist model of on the political life of the country. The Knesset changed. All this gradually spread to all sectors of society. It spreads to the army, to the education, to the information, to every level of everyday life. Libak, in fact, refusing to accept all these things and such a turn. He left Israel and he moved to Latin America, and he returned permanently to Israel in 1981. Israel had already changed. Expansion of the settlements had become part of the daily life. In the books at the schools, Palestine did not exist as a reference, not even on the map of the past of the Middle East. Palestinians were called Arabs with the broader definition, and even the parties in the Knesset, regardless of political affiliation, were placed within the Zionist framework. This escalated over the decades, and every time a crisis broke out, the common point of reference for the Israeli citizens was that the enforcement and the use of the weapons are the language that the Arabs, other words, the Palestinians, it's the only word that they can understand. So in this framework, that was formed in 1967 onwards, and was accepted by the society, what's watching the walls being built at the end of their settlement, and considering that whatever was on the other side of the wall was not their problem, but the Arab world's problem. Let them take them to Jordan, let them take them to Lebanon, let them take them to Egypt. It was the basic mentality. We heard it even now, and it came out as a proposal by the American president in the recent meeting with Tayyip Erdogan in Washington. So, what else is very impressive is that many Israelis, that they live in the settlements, they don't know that the area they live, it is a settlement. It's very difficult to believe it, but it's true. It's real. It's the reality of the West Bank in a lot of the cases. They don't know that this is occupied territory. Or to put it in another way, the parents who choose to move to the occupied territory in the West Bank, I mean the first generation that they enter the settlement and they start the settlement, they know exactly where they are. The kids that are growing up, I mean the second generation, in an environment, and they're getting the information from the parents that this is our land. This is our promised land. This is not occupied land. We have nothing to discuss. We have nothing to negotiate. We are here because this belongs to us. So they don't know it as well because they grow up learning that Male Adumim, Kiryat Arba, Modi'in, Ariel are the territories of this promised land. So the others occupied them, and today they are here to restore the normality. This is the approach, the Israeli approach, the settlement and the settler approach. It may be impressive, but it is the reality in which the majority of Israelis live and grow up. When I was in Jerusalem and I was with Israelis and I asked them, where you live? And they told me the name of the settlement, the name of the place they lived, and I asked them, why you choose the occupied territories? So the answer was, I was wrong. It's not occupied. This is the propaganda of the unwanted nobodies. That's how they're calling the United Nations. And the unwanted nobodies, they are there because, and they're spreading this propaganda out, because they're making money out of them projects. So that's the reason to spread these rumors, these lies. Last July, I was in the West Bank. I was watching again the movie, and I had a déjà vu. He had a scene of a drone, and you could see the car driving between the trees at some point, and you could see the path, I mean the asphalt, the road, how good it was. And I remember this, exactly this, what I will describe right now. So I was there for the 12 days war with Iran. And I went to the West Bank, and I went to the village of Susia to visit Bilal Hamdad, who is one of the 3 directors of the documentary No Other Land. So Bilal village is located between Gus Etzion settlement complex and Hebron. So Bilal village, it's in the Palestinian territories, but Gus Etzion is one of the biggest settlement complex in the West Bank. It's one of the most radical, and the expansions of the settlement, it's in a daily basis. So the last time I was there, it was 3 years ago. If you're leaving the occupied territories and you're moving to the Palestinian territories, you can realize it immediately, because it's like you are changing a country. I mean, you feel it from the road. That's why I mentioned the road before. You are driving like in the Israeli areas, in the settlements, in a road like the E75 that it comes from Athens to the north. Even better, you are driving in the Bundesbank. You leave the settlements, and immediately you are driving in a path that you have plenty of paddlers, holes on the street, and around the holes you have a bit of asphalt. This is the Palestinian territories. This is the basic difference. So I left Gus Etzion and I continued driving, and the path, it was like still, I was on E75, and I thought maybe I lost the road, maybe 3 years I didn't come here, so I forgot it, and I turned somewhere wrong. The road, it was the new reality of the Palestinian territories that the Ministry of Transportation of Israel start building. They prepare first the road. They made a road that it's the perfect road to accept the next generation of the settlers to come to the area. And already 3 months before June, so we're talking something like about February, they started evacuating a number of people that they're coming that they're going to reach 40,000, and they're going to displace something like 17 villages of Palestinians, so to expand the settlements of Gus Etzion. The Palestinian residents of the West Bank are under persecution, and Israel, with the blessing of and the ignorance in the same time of Washington, will annex the part of the designated area that it calls E1 on the map. It's the last project that Israel named as the next expansion of the settlements in the West Bank. Just for the record, let me mention that I visited the area of the village of Bilal as a foreign journalist. So I discovered that I couldn't visit the village of Bilal because, as a result of the recurring attacks from the hardline settlers, the court decided to ban access to all the foreign citizens and media in terms of protecting the Palestinian villagers. So I was there illegal, but when a month later an armed settler killed one of the protagonists of No Other Land on camera, most probably you saw it on the YouTube, and it was at the same place where I had been, and I had been there illegal as a foreigner. The court imposed him 4 days of house arrest, and then he was free to do whatever he wanted. So I'm describing a bit the reality of the Palestinians and in the same time of the Israelis. And is the Israeli society aware of the double standards in their daily lives and those of the Palestinians? A perfect example to answer this question, Udi most probably know that, it's the #1 road in Jerusalem. The #1 road in Jerusalem is the road that divides the west from the east Jerusalem. So if you cross the road from one side to the other, it's again, once more, like you are changing countries. In West Jerusalem, the roads are clean, without puddles, the public lighting strong and everywhere. In East Jerusalem, the garbage remains in the bins for days, public lighting its requirement, and around the puddlers in the roads, maybe you can see what I said before, a bit, an idea of asphalt. East Jerusalem has been annexed by Israel since 1967. The citizens, they pay the same taxes, the same money as others in the West Jerusalem. And yet the people, they are treated as inferior citizens, they are treated with hostility from the municipality of Jerusalem. So Israelis go to the army as they finish the school. The image they have of Palestinians is that they hate them. And the image the Palestinians have of an Israelis, as they are waiting for hours at the checkpoints, as we watch in the movie as well, to move from one area to another, is one of disrespect, humiliation, and violence. Most Israelis discover that things may be different than what they know when, after completing their studies, they go abroad for a master's degree or possibly for a job. And there they realize how differently the rest of the world approaches things in their area. Even then, the assessment is that others are unable to understand the reality and not them, who grow up in this place. Few will reconsider their view, and those of them who understand the reality will probably choose not to return to Israel. I will return to the 7th of October of 2023. Gaza has been under a total blockade, and Israel controls supply of essential goods since 2007. So when you live under such conditions, and it's logical that at some point there will be a reaction, an explosion. 7th of October was exactly the explosion. In the eyes of the Israelis, it was the proof of what the Palestinians really are and how they see the Israelis. For Palestinians, it was a scream, a cry of despair. It ended up as a terrorist attack that lags behind the development their experience today. And this is nothing less of a genocide in Gaza and ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. So 2 years later, with 66,000 Palestinian people dead, of which more than 80% are civilians, why the Israeli society they are not reacting? And why they're not reacting even this time? First of all, the shock of the 7th of October, it was huge. Most of the Israelis believed that they live in a sealed and sterilized environment. The IDF is all-powerful, and nothing could touch them. The narrative collapsed On October 8th, I called an Israeli friend to see how he was doing. He was in a state of panic. He had also experienced Yom Kippur in the past. I remember that he told me that for the first time in his life, he felt so much abandoned and unprotected, and he mentioned the Yom Kippur that it was a simulation of a war in front of what happened on that day. So this was the approach, this was the shock for the Israeli society, for the Israeli community, the day after of the 7th of October. So the IDF response was considered as a must and violent, more violent than the violence of the opponent. However, the excessive violence of the IDF not only does not change the facts, but it widens the gap between those who, at some point, will have to try again to live peacefully. Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Netanyahu's policies create more fronts, but in the eyes of the majority, it brings results. It has dealt with a powerful blow to Iran, eliminated the leadership of Hezbollah, and destroyed much of the military infrastructure of the organization in Lebanon, while reaching as far as Qatar and Yemen, is proving that it is once again strong, alive and kicking, and with a long hand this time. So this is the image that Netanyahu wants to convey. This is the image that the media sells to the audience in Israel, and this is the reading of the society. This is the reading that the society buys. There is no genocide. There are no crimes. There is only one path to victory through the disappearance of Hamas. Of course, the war is not painless for the Israelis either. More than 1,000 Israeli soldiers have been killed in Gaza. There are a few thousand, most probably like David that you watched in the movie of Udi, that they're refusing to join the army again because of the post-traumatic shock. The total cost of the operation, which means weapons, weapon systems, ammunition, and the call-up of the reservists, in these 2 years exceeds $30 million. The gross domestic product deficit was revised to 5.2%, and the real economy now relies heavily on government subsidies due to the repeated market closures. So, again, and I'm going to close with this, to the same question. Why does not Israeli society react? Why don't the opposition parties react? Why even at this last hour, when the country has reached the point of getting the criticism from most of the other countries, when its prime minister enters the United Nations hall and the hall empties, and when he's accused of committing war crimes by the International Criminal Court, why the opposition and the society refuse to open their eyes and to provide a solution to the problem that is none other than the essential, the real coexistence with the Palestinians. Everyone in Israel is discussing whether Netanyahu is serving the needs of the country or his personal ambitions. The opposition parties are looking for a way to win the next elections, but the mathematics does not work out. So, in fact, this would have been much easier if the left parties in Israel, which agreed to cooperate, were opening the door to the Palestinian-Israeli parties, and then the majority, it wasn't so difficult for them. But to cooperate with the people that you annexed 58 years ago, without even to ask them if you want to be annexed or not, to cooperate with the parties of those people, it's still a stigma, even for the political parties, the left political parties of Israel, of Knesset. And today it is even more difficult than any other time to bring up ideas of cooperation if you are not ready to renounce the isolation and the racism which led to the 7th of October. Long time ago, I had a discussion with Cyber Cat, And I asked him why he was insisting to Arafat to let him go back to the negotiation table if the conditions on the other side weren't something promising. So he answered to me that stopping things from getting worse is the basic condition for making them better. I think this mentality is missing from the region. And unfortunately, those who truly believe in peace have been sidelined by both of the sides. Thank you very much for your time.
Because you have to go, I would like to have a few comments just directly,
Sure.
because they have to go, and then we can. So, first of all, thank you so much, but I think maybe the answer to your question is on the mistake of the opening. When Alex Riebeck told you it was different before 67, and it's up to 67, I think here is your biggest problem. All your speak is 57 years, 67. The minimum we have to count is from 48. And if you understand, I want to say, nothing was different between 67. Only Alex Riebeck, that by the way is the best photographer I saw and the most human one. So I speak about, and it's important, somebody I really love and respect. Up to 66, there was, in 48 was the Nakba. In 51, even after it was a state, Moshe Dayan bombed the oldest mosque in Ashkelon and kicked the people to Gaza. So people in Gaza, some of them are already citizens of Israel that were kicked from Ashkelon to Gaza. And until 66, there was a military governor in all the Arab citizens of Israel. So in the Galilee, they said they already up to this naivete, the kibbutzim, even Pasolini went to the kibbutzim, my hero. But what is kibbutzim? Is a Jewish socialism on the Palestinian land. This is the essence of kibbutzim. So if you ask why Israeli now, even when there is such a genocide, cannot understand, it's because they don't count from 67, because the Jewish supremacy is built in the structure from 48. And I don't want to go now to Balfour Declaration and to go much deeper. I want to go when the real disaster happened, when the Nakba. After the Nakba, you could say that Jews came from the Holocaust and almost felt very fragile, and we can open it later. But they could let the refugees to come back to their houses. And then it would be a war with war crimes, but it wouldn't be a Nakba, it would be a war with war crimes. And you can say they didn't really, as Azmi Bishara said, maybe they were colonialists, but they really believed in the emancipation movement. And they could let them in, and they could build their villages back, and they could create a democracy. But from this day, it was such a deep Jewish supremacy. In every song that my mother sang me as a children, I hear now the contamination on it. So when this happened, and this is the mistake, and I'll open a bit. I think the mistake between Noam Chomsky and Zizek, and I'm on the side of Zizek, both of them support our cause, but different. Noam Chomsky really believed that if you show the people the truth, if we have a good media, people will choose the right thing. And what Jesus said, ideology is so strong that when people look at the truth, it's like a sun, it's make them blind. So it's like the fucking Germans, that more they see the genocide, more they silencing people who speak against the genocide. More they see it, more policemen in Berlin, a bit harder, like people try to blind it. So we have the whole structure of Israel built on Jewish supremacy. So if we will not count from 48, we will not understand. And this nostalgia that Alex Riebeck had until 67 is what created this Zionist left, that what I call shooting and crying, that this is why the head of the Zionist left, Yair Golan, he's like, when Israel went to bomb Iran, he was celebrating on the most amazing pylon.
To close it, to close it here.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly what I mentioned. I mean, this is what I mentioned, and this is what Alex mentioned as well, that after 67, it was a domination because of the political situation in the country and because of the military situation as well in Israel. After the Six-Day War, it was the domination of the Zionistic model in Knesset, which changed the things rapidly.
But I claim it started in 48. That's my main thing that Alex didn't see, that in the Galilee, there was a military, how do you say the Shilton in English?
There?
I ask in Shilton Tzvai. Huh? So it was a full military rule on Palestinian citizens of Israel. They didn't let them work the land in the Galilee or the Galilee, and they didn't let them work. And then was a law that if a land nobody work on it for 2 years, the states can take it. And from 48 to 66, it was a huge stealing of Palestinian land. And everyone that tried to come back to his village, they called him Fadain, and they shoot him on the borders. And this is, and the nostalgia that many Israelis have to this before 67, it's a fake nostalgia.
No
and that's the
disagreement.
problem.
Okay, because I have to go. There is no disagreement on that.
So
but
don't
still,
go, stay.
But still,
Stay.
you are talking about a movement. You are talking about a movement on the Palestinian neighborhood, on the Palestinian land, on the street. I'm talking again for Knesset. Okay, that after that it was official. It went out from the street. It came inside Knesset. That's what I mentioned when I said 67. I don't disagree with what you are saying. I'm starting from 48 as well, counting the things.
Yeah, but but in the Knesset from 48 to 67, it was pure control by Zionist left. It was totally, the Knesset was totally controlled by that, and I cannot see the settlers. The settlers is not, like Israel creates a story as there is Judah, that is the settlers, crazy Messianic people, and then there is Israel, a secular, normal place, and that in 67, that Judah is taking over Israel. But it's really, it's the same one, just one try to hide it, try to keep kind of a hiding mask and do the same thing. So I think that for Alex, especially Alex came from South America, right? And then he went back. The left that came from Argentina that were amazing in our demonstration, they had a fantasy. Remember, in Argentina also there was a huge anti-Semitism. Every time the regime, the coup took over, it was against the Jew. So they had a fantasy of this socialist Judaism there, and they didn't see that it was rotten already from the beginning. That's why I love Alex so much, but it's a different structure for somebody who grew up like me from the beginning. So suddenly when I realized like things that where my father was involved in all that, I like, whoa. And that's hard. And the way to handle it when this is hard is to become more right-wing usually, because if not, you have to go against your father. I will try to keep him staying lose his flight. It's all a trick here.
No, I'm just listening to him, and this is another image from the area. I mean, this is something that you can see with people that they come from the left. I mean, they originated to political left of the Israeli life. On the other hand, such kind of conversations are not common anymore in Israel.
They not exist.
I mean, a few days ago, Gideon Levy was here, and he was so happy to share, to express himself in Athens, to speak to the people in the streets. In Tel Aviv, the most of the times, he was telling me that he's not going out from the house because the reaction of the people is not the one that he's expecting or he can handle. But this is something that even as an idea, as a discussion, as an argument, you could see it before of 2023 of the 7th of October in Israel. Not a lot, but you could see it. You cannot see it anymore. Now Israel, it's in one side, I mean, next to the path of the domination and the accepting the stance and the position of the government without any question. And I'm not very optimistic that this thing will change. And because now we have an agreement as well, I'm not optimistic at all that this agreement will end positively for the Palestinians and it will last for a long. But this is another discussion. So I have to leave. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
So since the whole issues of left and right, of a divided, turned undivided society now comes into play, I think we could hear Polymeris Voglis a bit on these issues exactly, based also on his work and experience on these divisions and how, you know, how we could reflect maybe from the perspective of, you know, these divisions within a society. You know.
Okay. Well, first I'd like to make clear that I'm not a Middle East expert and I'm not a film studies expert. So what I would like to do is, for a few minutes, is that share a few thoughts about the movie, and I hope to, you know, perhaps have a reaction. Να με βλέπεις εσύ προσωπικά, So a few thoughts. Based, I'll probably you will see the connection with what I have studied in the past. I think the movie is a very, the film is a very good case to talk about trauma, past, and memory. To what extent, how you deal with the traumatic past. The traumatic past that haunts the actor and haunts the society. Traumatic past that's not, what I found interesting is that the traumatic past does not concern only people, but also the place, the land. It's not only about killing, murdering, but it's also about confiscating the land and making an Arab house into a mental asylum. How you appropriate land and how you destroy people. The thing is that about when you have this kind of a traumatic past, it's very strong. I mean, the image is very strong that a soldier killing a young, small girl. How you deal with this act, with the responsibility and the guilt. So the film is more or less is how not to deal, or the consequences when you don't deal with the past. If I would think of another title for the movie, I would say forgetting, or the inability to forget. And the whole film, I mean, is about how he cannot forget. He wants to forget what he has done, killing a girl, but he cannot escape from this, from the guilt and from the image and the responsibility for killing. And I found very interesting the idea of medicine, of a medicine that can erase the painful memories, traumatic memories. You take a shot and you forget the past. You forget not the past, but the guilt. and the responsibility about the past. And however, this past, I mean, the thing is that you cannot, even if you try, even if you want to forget the past, you cannot forget it in the end. It's the ghost. It's hauntology. Like the past that comes, you know, when you don't expect it, when you don't, you know, when you don't come to terms with the past and assume responsibility for the past, you know, you cannot escape it. I mean, and he tries, you know, to deal with the past in two ways. The one is silence, not being able to talk about what has happened, and also his father probably he hasn't talked to him about what happened in 1948. And he discovers and makes association with what happened. So it's kind of a silence. You don't talk about the past in order to forget the past, and this silence is from generation to generation, from the generation 48 of Nakba and to the generation of 2006. And then is the other way to deal when you are unable to talk about the past, to come to terms with the past, is to distance yourself, to leave. You know, he wants to leave. He leaves, the father leaves Israel to go to New York. The son leaves New York to go to Israel, but then he wants to return, or one of his choices to return to New York. So exactly because of the inability to deal with the past, one way is to distance yourself, be away from the place that what happened, that you know, recalls this traumatic past, and the other is silence. What can you do? The other way is, when you have this traumatic past, is to process this past. There are two ways. The one is, I mean, and I'm referring to the work of Dominic Lacapra and the way he studied Holocaust memories. And the tools and the categories are from psychoanalysis. The one is acting out, the other is working through. There are two ways to deal with the past: working through, acting out. Acting out is like, you know, expressing in a more, let's say, and it's not spontaneous, but in a way, let's say, how you said it before, hysteric way, you know, what happened in the past, the trauma. And the other is working through. And here is, I think, very important, because working through is trying to make sense of the past, of the traumatic past, through being able to talk about the past, to turn the past into a narrative, into a verbal act. And the moment in the movie that the actor says, when he's underground, says, "I'm a killer," it's the moment of recognition, of coming to terms with the past, of naming himself, identifying himself as a killer, and bearing the responsibility for being a killer. And I think this is a very good case, because it's not that he, at the end, becomes, you know, the past. He is able to talk about the past and recognize his guilt and assume responsibility. But also because the question of a narrative, how you make the past into a story, or how you make past in history, is a question of narrative. And film is a form of narrative. So what I found very interesting and impressive in your movie is that you try to deal with this traumatic past and offer it, or transform it, better word, transform it into a narrative about about the past, about memory, about guilt, and about responsibility. And although, of course, it's not let's say, a happy ending film, because there is also the question of the suicide in the end in New York, which is interesting, and also if I may ask a question, is why the mother is dead, why the mother is absent. You see, it's the relation also between father and son, between generations, between memory and the memory of Nazi concentration camps, and the memory of Nakba, and then the son who is a IDF soldier. And then there's a mother who is absent, who is dead. I mean, I would like, if I would ask one question is about why this choice, but also, I mean, I don't want, it's okay, I'm talking too much. I found very interesting the narrative about the cinematic narrative about how we can talk about a traumatic past in a self-reflecting way, not to just to accuse someone, to put the blame on an IDF soldier, but also to question the issue to address the issue of responsibility and guilt. And I'm very happy that the movie was great, and congratulations. And I hope that my thoughts are not completely just off the mark.
The opposite. I really extremely thank you for you. I'm so thank you for you about going into this journey that I tried to say, and in a way your speak reconnect me to this moment that I did it, because by the way I did the film, I move a little bit association here. Of course, the question of the mother I leave to the end. Or maybe at the beginning I do the confession. But before the movie, really, I did it in 2005. And it was interesting for me to hear him because the opening has to be in Jerusalem Film Festival. And then it was the beginning of BDS. And I didn't know yet what BDS is. It was really the beginning. And Zizek was invited to speak about my film in Jerusalem. And I felt that I want to start the film in Ramallah and not in Jerusalem. And I did it in just before I said I don't want to open in Jerusalem, I opened in Ramallah. And also there was a person that I'm so proud and humble to say was my friend, is Mahmoud Darwish. And I said I need that Mahmoud Darwish will see it before, because if he said it's wrong, I'm not showing it in Jerusalem. And then the war that Israel opened on Lebanon started on the same day that we have to go. And I told Slavoj, man, like you don't involve with it. There's no reason for you now to die. Say, are you crazy? It's so exciting. Of course I'm coming. And like we both going to Ramallah, and I was sure that no Palestinian will come to see a film when Israel, and I was still under Israel, you saw the credit. And we came, and it was full house in Ramallah. And then also I realized it was the safest place for me, because Israel and Lebanon were shooting each other, and we were in Ramallah. So it was, and Mahmoud Darwish sitting there, and it's a full house. And of course, when it's ended, it was the longer, he came and hugged me and said, wow, and he was so humble. He said, I'm dealing with the thing that you are dealing with, the thing. I said, of course, I took it from you, like you're my teacher. It makes sense. It's a dialogue with your concept of exile and all that. And then they told me, but Udi, what do you mean Zizek is going to speak in Jerusalem Film Festival? It's like we're starting a movement, BDS. And this was a little beautiful moment. I just want to say, I said, of course I want to join. What should we do? You know, we didn't know. So I said, first of all, he cannot be a guest of Jerusalem Film Festival. So we start to make calls and all that. And we called Judith Butler because they're kind of enemies, but friends, intellectually they support. And we decided we give back the money to Jerusalem Film Festival, and that we'll do Zizek in a private place with the approval of BDS. And for me, and that's why I said, it was when I learned that the reason I support BDS is not only, I think, if boycott can hurt Israel or not, but the possibility to give sovereignty to the one who don't have sovereignty. That it's enough that the Palestinian ask me to join it, and to said, you know, even if I'm not sure I agree with it, I'm doing it. It's the first step that we can give power to the one who don't have power. So that's, I have to finish with this story of 2005-6. About the way you read it very closely, the film, and it's really touched me. And there are few reasons why the mother is not there, I think. And it's exactly true that the father-son and the repetition and the going to exile, because for me, it's important to go to exile. If you remember also in the same time when you said the responsibility, I'm a killer, is when Vals in Bashir came out. Oh, yeah. And in the end of Vals of Bashir, suddenly I hear him, he tells the psychologist, but we are like the Nazis. And the psychologist said, no, you are not. Remember, you are not the one who did the killing. And I was like, this beautiful movie was to clean the conscience of the Israeli. Like, no, and here it was important for me, without knowing that on the same time said, yeah, you are a killer, and you have to live with it, and you have to go home, back to Brooklyn, you know, like, because horrific things will happen if you stay here in a way. And there was a few reasons of the mother is not there. First of all, the film I did before was Local Angel. And now I have to speak as a Jewish boy and as a political person. The woman I love most was my mother. And my mother is not only my mother, but she was the founder of the civil rights movement in Israel. And she was the first feminist. And she did homosexuality legal in Israel by herself. And she was beautiful and radical. And her heart was one step ahead of her ideology. So she grew up totally Zionist. And she was the head of the Zionist left party. And she always understood that something is wrong. So each time, so she was already in 1980 something, suddenly she support the refusnik. So there was an issue with her that to see this woman in movement all the time, that she carried the past of the Zionist weight, she cannot say goodbye to it, and then her heart moving forward. And also the interesting thing with my mother was that she was kind of genius and lawyer and all that, but as a woman in a male society, instead to tell them, guys, I'm doing it because I have the right instinct, she has to be smarter than them. So she was legalistic, and she was smarter than them, and she knew all the Bible by heart and all that. But when I told her, Mama, the reason you are right is not when your logic take you, but it's where your heart take you. And all the time I thought about this song, Change Your Heart, Look Around You. You remember this movie? In a way, and I repeat about psychoanalysis and Noam Chomsky, sometimes in order to see, we have first to change the heart. And the heart of the Israeli are blocked. And so all this is said because I made a movie before, Local Angel, and my mom was starring there. And I go with her, we're visiting Chairman Arafat when he's on the Muqata, and I ask him what should I do in order for the Palestinians to forgive us. And everyone were laughing because it's a question, as I said, that nobody asked, that we have to ask forgiveness. And it was when my mom couldn't understand then why I'm looking for binational states, for one place from the river to the sea. She couldn't do this step. She has, no, we have to have 2 states, then we'll come back. And you saw the moment that she cannot go totally in this, and I gave a lot of power to my mom in this film, and to the mother as such, and also the meeting of her with Hanan Ashrawi as sisterhood, as 2 women that they could make peace in a second. So it was a very film about the power of the woman. The woman is a smart, the woman, the matriarch, in a lot. But the disease is the father. So I had to make this film like that. And then there is in psychoanalysis something else that my daughter was pretty young there, and she saw it and said, the mother is not here. Why? Because you separated? And suddenly you realize that when you do a film that is more than just political, in the same time I was in psychoanalysis, in separation, and I brought also the fact that I'm suddenly alone in the world. And the figure of my father, I was all the time in denial of him. My father did crime by killing Palestinians, but he did this crime because he was part of the institution that stole the lands in the Galilee. And I never deal with him because I was so enjoying to adore the mother that she's so ahead of the time, and she passed me the way. And when I told her, I'm not even voting for you, I'm voting for the Communist Party, she said, absolutely, you're right, because it's the Palestinian party. So even she enjoyed, it's almost like I was the unconscious that she cannot maybe do as a leader. The father was easy for me to deal as a weak man. And suddenly I said, no, the father is the one that carried the curse, so it is in a way a movie about the father and about the curse of the father. And the absence of the mother is you know what, there is the longing to the fart there in the, if you remember, it's the holy, and her absence, it's almost like the disease. And when you're down there, you know, I'm Freudian, I'm not Jungian, so I cannot get too much of what is to go down there. But I just want to end the part I stole from Ulysses, the part with the blood. If you remember, Ulysses go to the underground, and that the only way, he said, if you bring me to see my mother, and Tiresias is there really telling him in the end of Ulysses, that the end is so beautiful. So the end of Ulysses really happened in the middle. And it's after, you guys remember, I mean, you're Greek, you should know all that, no? Or maybe, you remember what's happened in the middle there? The story that...
Ulysses goes to the underworld.
He go down, but then Tiresias tell him that the end is not when he go back and married and happy with his wife. The curse is not ending. He tell him, after this, you go again, because Poseidon didn't forgive you. And then you have to leave. After all the happy end, you have to leave again, and he arrived to a shore, and he doesn't know what to do, so he take the oar on his back, and he's going inland. And when he's going inland, he's walking, and then a stranger, that maybe a Ulysses from the inland, walking next to him and tell him, why do you carry these things to make flour? Because he never saw an oar, because he never saw the sea. And Ulysses looked at him like that, and when Poseidon hear it, he realized that there is a whole world that doesn't know the sea. And Poseidon is laughing very loudly, become humble, and only then he forgive him. All this happened in the underworld when Ulysses all he wants is to meet his mother. So that's my secret story that I'm never sure about, that this place is the mother, the meeting of the mother is happening there. There's secret that don't have to be in the film. It's the way the art, I'm like sharing you the inner artist story. I gave more answer to the mother than I ever thought. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. I think we should, and for several reasons, there are people that are working here and they need to go. What I suggest, because I'm sure there are so many of you that want to ask questions, you get a good place on the table, close to Udi, to the place we're going to have a dinner. So we'll just keep going over. We promised Raki, right, tonight. So let me invite you to thank a lot Udi, Polymeris, and Panos.